Everyone, in this advanced SQL playlist I am back with a new video, and this video will be super useful to you to solve some of the advanced level SQL problem. So I'll be discussing about the list aggregate or the string aggregate function. Now if you don't know about this function or you haven't heard about this, please don't run away. Do watch this video till the very end, because this is a must know function to crack the SQL interviews, because this function will produce some results which is kind of unique, and it can only be produced into a simple way with the help of this function. So these results which this particular function it produces is almost impossible to do. Also, if it is possible, it will be quite complex and hard to do with all the other functions. This is a must watch video for you all. So friends, I would request you to watch this video till the very end, and also do like this video and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't. Let us quickly move to our data set. You can see onto my screen I have a very simple data set here, and also I'll be building upon onto the same data set to explain some of the cases, some of the more advanced level cases into this particular function. See what is the data set all about. So you can see into the very first column I have the customer ID, into the column B I have the order ID, into the column C I have the item names, and into the column D I have the quantities. Now this particular data set is quite simple to understand. So this particular customer ID, his order ID is 1, and into the order ID 1 the item is mouse, and how much quantity of this particular item is being purchased by this particular customer ID into this order ID. So you can see mouse 2 quantity, mouse keyboard 3 quantity. So all these details are present into my data set here. So what is the output result which we want to generate with the help of the list aggregate or the string aggregate function? So you can see I want to generate this kind of similar output into my answer. So I will have the customer ID, I'll have the summary, and now into this summary column I would want to know, okay, what all the items were purchased and their quantities. Within the same row I want to get the details of all the items and the quantities which all the customers or this particular customer has purchased. Friends, you can pause this video right now and try to generate the same results which I have right now onto my screen with the help of all the other functions, all the other SQL functions which we have studied till now. So you can write your answer into the comment box, you can write your query into the comment box if you are getting the correct answer or the similar result right now which is displaying onto our screen. If you can solve this problem with the help of other functions, so your comment or your query answer might help me as well as all the other people. If you are having an alternative query on how you can solve the same problem without using the list aggregate or the string aggregate function, you can please note down your comment, write down your comment into the comment box. Moving ahead with this particular function, let us see how we can solve this particular problem with the help of the string function, and it is so much simple to solve this problem. So let us move to my SQL Server Management Studio where I have imported the same data set from before. Friends, you can see I will attach the code or the query into the description box of this video, and you can just import the same data set onto your SSMS. So let us do this select star from details again, and let us generate the same answer. So you can see I'm getting the same query. So let us see what is the string aggregate function. So into the SSMS, it is not the list aggregate function but the string aggregate function which we will need to use. So list aggregate is used, I guess, into the Oracle. So I'll be displaying this image right now which you can see onto your screen. So according to all these different languages, you will have to use the same function. So all the functions which you are seeing right now onto your screen, they have all the same feature, just that the name is different into all these different programming languages. So you can see I'll just use into the SSMS, we use the string aggregate function, but the work remains the same as for the list aggregate function. Let us see how to use the string aggregate function. So friends, you can see onto the output what we want. So we want to generate all the item names minus the quantity which has been bought, and you can see I want to generate a single row in which I'll be getting all the items which has been purchased by this particular customer. So let us move forward to get the same result. So I would do a simple select, and I would write here string aggregate. I'll open a bracket. Into the expression, you can see I want to get, or I want to write the column name here on which I want to display all the items from. So you can see I was having the items column here, and into the items column I just want to get all the values which are present into the all the rows into this particular column, which is the item column, and I want to just aggregate, you can say I just want to aggregate all these values into a single row. I would need to write this particular column name into my query here. So this is my column currently, in which I just want to aggregate all the values which are present into this column into just a single row. So I would need to provide the column name at the very first. So the column name is item. Now next I want to provide a kind of expression through which all these values would be separated into my row. You can see into this cell all these values, different values, they are separated with the help of a comma. Like these minus is also present or the dash is also present, but you can see all these values into this particular column, they are separated with the help of this particular comma. So I want to give this particular expression into my query here, and the code would know, okay, I need to separate all these values into this column with the help of this expression which is being provided. So let's say I want to separate all the values with the help of comma, so I would just provide here comma, and after this I would just simply write here details from details. Let us execute the query. Let us see what is the output which we are getting. I'll just remove this. I'll just execute the query again. So friends, you can see into a single row I am getting all the values. So I would just rename the column as summary. I'll execute the code again. See the value which I am getting into a single row, I am getting all these items which were purchased by this particular customer into a single row. Friends, the output which we are getting is quite different from what we wanted. So if you would see the output which we want right now, I want to get the item name, and I also want to know what is the quantity which has been purchased for that particular item. For example, for mouse 2 quantity has been purchased, for keyboard 3 quantity has been purchased. So also this information I want into my row, but here I'm just getting the information about the items which has been purchased. So how do we need to proceed with this? So can we apply this logic, like can we create a new column and we can just concatenate both of these values, which is the item and the quantity, and we'll be creating a new column itself, and we'll be giving that particular column name instead of this item, and with the help of that we'll be displaying all this particular value like how it is into our output. Let us see, let us write the query for this also. So I would just remove this and I would write here select cat item comma quantity from details. Let us execute the code. So you can see I have concatenated the item as well as the quantity which was purchased. Also I want to separate these two values with the help of a dash. So I would also provide a new value into the concat thing, that is the dash here. I would just provide this. I'll execute the code. So you can see a dash has been provided alongside with the item and the quantity. Now with the help of this value which I'm getting right now, I'll be using that into the string aggregate function. So I would do, or I'll just make this into a subquery here, and I would write here select string aggregate bracket open, and let us rename this query as detail. And so what is the expression with which I want to separate all these values into my column here which is being displayed? So let's say I want to separate all these values with the help of a colon this time. So instead of comma I would provide here a colon. So I'll just do this. I'll close the bracket from, I'll provide, let us again execute the query. So friends, you can see we have got our desired answer, and this time our values are separated with the help of a colon. Let's say I want to generate the same result which we wanted. Instead of the colon I wanted the comma, so I would just replace this colon with a comma, and I would again execute the query. So friends, you can see we are getting the desired answer which we needed at the very first time, or into our Excel sheet which is being displayed. Let me rename this column as the summary column. Just execute the code again. So yeah, the column has been renamed. After this, you can also see into the Excel sheet here, I have the customer ID, but only the summary column is being presented into the output. I also want to generate this particular customer ID column here. How can I do this? So for this, I would just take the inner query right now, and I'll just paste this here. Now into this particular query, which you can see, let's say, let me run the query once. Let us see what is the output which we are getting. So you can see I'm getting the detail column here, in which all the item names along with the quantity which were purchased for the items is being displayed here. Now along with this also, I want to get the customer ID. Now it is very much possible, like into our database, it will not be the data for just a customer. There will be thousand lakhs of customers present into our database. Now what will this function do? Let's say this particular customer ID was C2 and this particular customer ID was C3, and let's say I would just do a simple select star from details. I would do here. So this is my new table right now. Just execute this select star from details. So you can see I have added some of the C2 and the C3 customer IDs. Let us say these are some of the new customers into our database. Now if I would just want to know, like for each of the customer ID 1, I want to know the details of all the items and the quantity which has been purchased into a row. For each of the customer, I want to get the detail. So for customer ID 1, I'll be having a new row. For customer ID 2, you can see I'll be having, or I should be having, a new row. Similarly for customer ID 3, I should have a new row. So this kind of information I should get. But what about the function which we have written right now? What is the function it is doing? So each of the item which is present into the column known as item and the quantity, it is just producing that into a single row. Like it is not distributing the items and the quantity which is purchased basis on the customers. For each of the customer, a new row is not being generated. It is just acting upon the single column and a single row is being produced. But we don't want to generate this result, because into the real case scenarios, we have lakhs and thousands of customers into our database. So for each customer, we would want to generate such kind of result. How should we proceed with this particular problem? Right now, for all the customers, we are getting the details into just a single row. We want to divide this as per the customer whatever they have purchased. So let us see what is the changes into the output which we want to generate. So for that, let's say I just want to get the customer ID, and for each of the customer, let's say whatever item has been purchased, we will be getting the output into our query. So I'll do the similar changes here, and let me try to demonstrate what are the changes which is required right now after this. So for customer ID 1, you can see these all items have been purchased, these all quantities have been purchased. We have got the answer. For customer ID 2, you can see here only laptop has been purchased, so we'll be getting the data for the laptop only. Similarly for customer ID 3, only pendrive has been purchased, so we should get the data for pendrive. So this is the kind of answer which I am wanting to generate right now. Let us see how to do this with the help of the SQL query. So I would just write here customer ID comma, and you can see here this is all correct, because this is the form which I want to generate my answers into. So let us see what is the output. This is all clear right now. So for customer ID 1, I'm getting the detail column, mouse 2 items are purchased. Similarly for customer ID 1, I'm getting keyboard 3 item has been purchased. Customer ID 3, pendrive 3 items has been purchased. Let us put this into the subquery, and with the help of the same logic which we have done into the query above, we'll be doing the same thing. So I would just write here select customer ID, because into the very first column I want to get the customer ID. String aggregate, the same thing I want to generate onto which column. So this is the detail column. Here I would want to write here comma, and here what is the value with which I want to separate all these values. So with the help of a comma I would provide here, and this would act as a summary table for me from. And I hope this query is pretty much clear. It is very much simple to understand. If you had understood the previous query, this query is very much simple. Let us rerun this query, and this time I want to generate this kind of result which you can see right now. So I would just select the query and I would execute the statement. So this should be string and aggregate. Yep, this time it is correct. So I would just select this query, I'll execute the statement. So friends, you can see our error is being produced, and I have just produced this error with intentionally I have done this. So if you would read this error clearly, you have the answer to this particular error. So the error says column a dot customer id is invalid in the select list because it is not contained in either an aggregate function or the group by clause. So friends, you have the answer with this particular error itself. So friends, the error, it is telling that you must aggregate your output which you want to generate. For example, I would have here, let's say customer 1, customer 1, customer 2 and customer 2, and the cost of the item which has been purchased. I would just write here some random numbers. This was the customer id, this is the customer id, and this is the, let's say, amount of the item which has been purchased. Now for each of the customer, if I want to generate the total amount of the item which has been purchased in case of simple query, SQL query, what is the kind of query which I would need to write? So this is the case in the Excel. So this is how into the Excel or the output which I want to generate. So into these cases, the query would be something like select id comma sum of amount from table, and after this we need to add the group by statement, if you remember, because onto the basis of the group by and whatever column name which I'll be giving after group by, onto that the values would be aggregated. So the same logic here we also need to provide, because if you think deep down, the same kind of logic is being applied here. We are aggregating based on a single column. So we are aggregating all the results, all the items here into a single row basis onto the customer id column. So here we need to provide group by customer id also into in case of the string aggregate. Now if I need to do here, so it would be group by id. So this query would produce this result which you can see right now. Similarly, I need to aggregate at the very last. Let's say I've done everything here. At the very last, I want to generate the result for each of the customers. So I need to aggregate my data onto the basis of the each of the customer at the very last. So you can see here for customer id 1, I want to generate the summary. Customer id 2, I want to generate the summary. The same thing I want to generate here also. So that is why I need to provide here at the very last group by customer id. And after this, if I want to execute the query, and you will see the result, you can see for customer id 1 I'm getting all the summary, customer id 2 I'm getting all the summary, and also for the customer id, and this is the same kind of result which we wanted to generate. So friends, this is how we can generate this kind of result with the help of the string aggregate function. Now if you want to do with the help of any other function, you can do it, and please write your answer into the comment box so that it can help me as well as all the other people. Move to the next concept here. So let's say into the output which I'm generating here into the summary column, so the output which is generated is kind of very much random in nature, or it is not properly distributed. So let's say I want to generate the output, and I want to generate the output in such a way that the items which are listed, they are into the ascending order of the amount of items that has been purchased. To the summary column for each of the customers, I would need to generate a result which is something like for customer id 1, and into the next column, into the summary column, the very first value which I should get is the item which is the least purchased, and similarly this should be into the ascending order. So let us see, this is an add-on feature here which we can apply. Let's say I want to get all the details for a customer, and it should be ordered, like the answer which I'm getting, it should be ordered onto the basis of the quantity which has been purchased by the customer. So the item which is the least quantity which has been purchased, that should come first, and similarly it should be into the increasing order. So let us see how to do this. So I'll just write here select, and I would write here string aggregate comma onto which column. So I want to get all the item names, let's say I want to generate it, and onto what is the expression or the separator. So let's say I would take here comma only for simplicity, and after this we need to write here with group, and I would open the bracket. Here we need to provide onto what is the column on which you want to order your output. So here I need to provide the column name. So let's say I just want to order my output onto the basis of the item column. So I would write here item. I would try to explain much more after the result we'll be getting. So let us rename the column as summary. From details I would write, let us execute the code. So just select the code, execute it. So you can see I'm getting the output. So first of all, I'm getting the headphone here, keyboard, laptop, mouse, and pen drive. So it is arranged into the increasing order basis onto the alphabet of the very first character of the words. So H is coming at the very first, after that K would come, L, M, and P. So that is what onto the basis of the item column it is being ordered. So you can also order onto the basis of the descending order. So into this case pen drive would come first, then mouse, laptop, like it would be arranged into the opposite order into the previous case. So you can see here pen drive is coming here, mouse, laptop, keyboard, and headphone. So it is arranged into the descending order. Also you can arrange onto the basis of the other column as well, as I discussed. So you can also arrange onto the basis of the other column. So I would just write here quantity. So let us order our output basis on the quantity which has been purchased by each of the customer. So let's say I would do this into the descending order. So I would just execute the code here. So you can see I'm getting headphones at the very first, then keyboard, pen drive, mouse, and then laptop. So headphone was purchased 5 quantity. So you can see we are getting the highest quantity item which has been purchased, I'm getting at the very first. Then I'm getting keyboard, then I'm getting pen drive, mouse, and laptop. So laptop, it is just one quantity which has been purchased, so I'm getting at the very last. So friends, you can just simply order your output onto the basis of the same thing, help of this within group function which is present here, which you can see on add on onto the string aggregate function. A lot of many times we encounter cases where we need to order our output which we are getting basis onto the certain order or onto the certain column. So that is why onto those cases this within group is very much useful, as you can see. Let us move ahead. Let us see one more case here. Let's say instead of a single, you can just see the order ID 1 is displaying here. Instead of the order ID 1, let's say I have multiple order IDs itself. So let's say this was the order ID 2. Similarly, let's say this was the for customer ID 1 only, I would just take here, and this is the order ID, let's say 2, and this is the order ID 3. Now what is the result which I want to generate here? So I would go to my Excel and I would just change this customer ID 1, customer ID 1, and for customer ID 1 I have changed some of the order IDs. So I would write here 2, 2, 3. So for customer ID 1 and order ID 1, I would want some of the summary. Similarly for customer ID 1 only and order ID 2, I want to know all the summary of the items which has been purchased. Similarly at the very last, customer ID 1 and the order ID 3, I want to generate all the results. So you can see here for customer ID 1 and into the order 1, these were the items which were purchased. Similarly in customer ID 1 into the order 2, these were items which were purchased. So this is the output which we want to generate right now. Let us see how to do this. By now you must have got an idea what we need to do here. So yes, if you had got an idea, we need to concat both the columns here, which is the customer ID and the order ID, and we need to proceed after there. So I would just write here concat, and I would concat the customer ID column. I would give a dash here again with the order ID column. It provide a space after this column. So let us rename this column. So I would rename this column as customer order, and after this I would try to generate another column which is concat, and this time I'll be concatenating the item with the quantity. I'll provide some space, and I would rename this column as, let's say, summary from details. Let us see what is the output which is being generated by this. So you can see I'm getting the customer and the order customer ID 1, C1 minus 1, C1 minus 1. Okay, I think we need to rerun the query from the very beginning. Yep, this is now okay. Let me rerun the query again. So you can see customer ID 1, order 1, customer ID 1, order 1, customer ID 1, order 2, and order 3. I'm having all these details. Now friends, now from here it is very much clear what we need to do. So after this I would just provide this into a subquery, and I'll be using the string aggregate function to do some changes here or to generate the desired output. So I would do here a select, and I'll write here customer order, because you can see into the output I need to generate the customer ID and the order ID, and into those order ID which is purchased by that customer ID I want to generate the summary of all the items which have been purchased. So I would need to get the customer and this particular column, like the very first column which you can see here, and after this I'll be using the string aggregate function. And after this, onto which column do I want to aggregate my data? So I want to aggregate my data of the summary column. And what is the separator with which you want to separate? Let's say I want to separate every data here, every value, with the help of a colon, and I would rename this column as summary. And after this I would write here from this table, and at the very last you might have got idea what we need to do here. So at the very last we need to group by, and group by onto the basis of the customer order itself, because if we had not done the concat, if you just think, it is very much impossible for me to generate this kind of result for each of the customer and for each of the order. So we need to group by onto the basis of the customer and the order, like this particular column. So the column name is quite vague here, so I've just provided for now. So I'll just execute the code. So friends, you can see I'm getting the desired output for customer ID 1, order ID 1. I'm getting all the order summary. Customer ID 1, order ID 2. I'm getting all the summary. Customer ID 1, order ID 3, I'm getting this summary. So I'm getting all these details here. Similarly, let's say if we were having many other customers into our database, let's say instead of customer 1 I was having customer 2. So into that case, what is the kind of output which would have been generated? So I would just execute the code, because into the real case they will be having thousands, lakhs of customers. So you can see here I'm getting here customer ID 2, order ID 3, the summary which has been purchased. So I'm getting the exact result with the help of the string aggregate function which we wanted. So friends, I hope you had found this video quite useful, because this is a very important function to know to crack some of the advanced level problems into the SQL interviews. So I just wanted to bring out this video and give a visibility of these advanced level functions which are being asked into the interviews nowadays. So friends, I hope you had found this video quite useful, and do like this video and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't, to receive such kind of useful information. Meet you in the next video. Thank you so much. Bye.